Coming to you live from the Business RadioX studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Ganley, and I am here today with Tarji Carter. She is the founder and president of the Franchise Player. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you. So with that being said, tell us a little bit. I love the name. I got to tell you, I love the name of your business, the Franchise Player. So tell me a little bit about the culmination of that. I know you've been in the industry a very long time, so tell us more.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry about a decade and a half. It was all a fluke. I worked in the hotel industry and happened to meet the then president of Cinnabon, who was staying at my hotel. And next thing you know, I'm selling franchises. So that's really how I cut my teeth on the franchise industry. So fast forward, last year I was hoping to lead a program that was geared towards African Americans in the franchise community. That program has been paused. And so that is what really prompted the creation of the Franchise Player. And so it's really a labor of love. Throughout my career in franchising, I worked for a number of different organizations, and they were all very, very focused on growing the brand. But I noticed pretty quickly that a lot of African Americans didn't necessarily have access to information about franchising and how beneficial it could be to establishing legacy and generational wealth. And so it's been a personal mission of mine to educate everyone, but to also have a special focus for the community that needs it the most.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I totally love that. And, franchising is a mystery to a lot of people. So,
it is.
Until you're in it, and then you're like, it's not a mystery anymore. But we know the word franchise, we understand it, we relate it to football, we relate it to McDonald's. We kind of get that there's a big, obviously a successful concept. But I don't think most realize how much opportunity is so darn accessible to so many different types of people from different backgrounds. So with a focus on diversity and just getting the word out specifically to African Americans or whoever that group might be, how do you approach that? Like, how do you do that with intention, I guess?
It's interesting because according to Forbes, statistics show that businesses that make it point to encourage ethnic diversity are 35% likely to increase revenue. So I think that's a great place to start. I recently wrote an article that talked about my childhood and my frequent use of a certain brand, certain franchise brand. I would go to this brand with my dad all the time. And as a kid growing up in the inner city of Boston, it was just a trip to to McDonald's with my dad almost monthly. And we would sit there and we'd have our ritual. And never once did I even think or even know to think that this could be a pathway to success, a career for me growing up. It took until I moved from Boston to Atlanta to figure that out. And again, I mentioned that it was really, really a fluke. I don't believe in, I don't really truly believe in, what's the word? Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Luck. Or coincidence, I guess.
Coincidence,
coincidence. So it's just, I think it was a matter of a perfect storm. I was hired by Focus Brands. At the time, they owned a number of different brands, and I was hired as a franchising manager for Carvel. Within 8 months, I was promoted to director over Cinnabon and Carvel for the entire country. And that was a huge responsibility. I stumbled along the way, again, because it was all very new to me. But what I also noticed is from my childhood until today, when you look at operations, you look at the frontline staff, you look at those who are helping to run the stores and not just in the restaurant industry, but pretty much across the board. There are a lot of African Americans that are working day in and day out in these franchise outlets, and a lot of them may not know, just like I didn't know, that ownership is could be a reality, right? And then what we like to do is it's teach the difference between the myths and the realities, right? And so some folks might think that it's not something that's attainable, or that you have to have millions of dollars to get into franchising. And with some brands that might be the case, but not every brand. And so at the Franchise Player, what we focus on is bringing education, resources, and opportunities to aspiring franchisees, working with brands that have a focus on diversity. And when I say a focus, meaning, you know what, we're not doing a great job right now, or we are, and we want to get better, right? So it starts somewhere. And I think the brands that can pause and admit, you know what, we probably can do something different, those are the brands we want to work with, because we know that there's a heart for really changing the face of the game.
Yeah. And you just mentioned earlier with that stat, that's pretty profound. I think you said 35%?
35% according to Forbes. And I think I'll trust Forbes
right.
numbers.
But there's right. All numbers are numbers, but there's an impact there. There's a truth there, right? To look at and question, why is that? And so, but yeah, so look, the pathway of an employee, I think without even saying, we could know just from a little bit of experience that if you have employees that come to work every day and have an aspiration, or at least they know ahead of time when they start their journey as an employee or in a career, that career could have a long-term, have legs to it, right?
Absolutely.
With attached. Like, it's a whole different game if you're leaving high school, let's say. Mm-hmm. And I have a daughter now that I'm not sure what she's going to want to do. She's not looking at college yet. Mm-hmm. And so she'll get a job, and there's a good chance she could get jobs at franchises or something. But wouldn't it be great if there was that pathway that was sort of already there, that would have said, look, if you pay your dues, if you work towards this could be an option, right?
Yeah, and that's a conversation that can happen in the interviewing process, right? Right. So you can get a lot more mileage from someone if they understand how this impacts them individually and personally, right? So if you say, listen, here's your job at McDonald's, we'll just use McDonald's as an example, and this is what your salary will be. If you can get an individual to look at it as you're getting paid to train, to own your own store one day, just think about how that opens up a world of opportunities for this person. So now, instead of just working the cash register and going home when their shift is over, they're going to want to learn every aspect of that business. And what a great way to grow your staff and your employees to being, just hourly employees, to someone who really has a vested interest in your investment, right? And so that's a great way, I believe, that we can all pay it forward.
Yeah. And that's, when you think about the ingredients of a franchise brand, it's, hey, how do we make every location successful, right? There's no location they don't want to be wildly successful, right? And how do you do that? Well, part of it is having a great team, being able to hire and have a great team. And of course, if that occurs, then and we just talked about what we said, we have a bullpen of potential candidates always growing, always building, right?
Absolutely.
So you're doing both,
You can do them both. And I just think we owe it to ourselves, right? Because eventually we're going to pass this along, hopefully from generation to generation, and create legacy for our families. So I think if we start there, that's a great place to start.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about the franchise player, because I think that's a really cool concept, the way that you're using the name. And then I think that you kind of approach candidates sort of as different types of positions but tell me a little bit about how you approach that so that you at the franchise player can help the candidates, help the brands, help really make those matches. But tell me more about that.
Yeah. So we are working to bridge the gap. So in one aspect, we work with the candidates. So there are 4 different tracks, if you will, or pathways. The first pathway is, individuals who work in operations who are looking to take the next step into ownership. The next path would be individuals who are looking to invest in franchising. They may be in a different industry and they're looking to either change careers or have an investment opportunity. The third path would be those who are existing franchisees with any given brand, any given industry, and they're looking to diversify and take advantage of the incentives that we're able to negotiate with some of these brands. And then the fourth would be individuals who have a concept that they're looking to then convert into a franchise.
Right.
So that's how we work with the individuals. On the brand side, brands are stretched thin, right? We hear these large brands and we think they just have thousands of employees everywhere. And that's not the case. I remember when I worked at Cinnabon, our team was so small, we would joke that we could all fit inside of a Volkswagen Beetle. Like it was, so the brand has this huge awareness and identity. And sometimes it's just a matter of, a few really strong people just holding things together. And so for the brands, what it does is you can kind of outsource your minority program through the franchise players. So if you're looking to diversify and bring in a more diverse group of candidates, partner with us. We can help you achieve that goal versus having to try and invent a program that you may or may not have the time and resources to do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's so but you mentioned 4 positions. I thought that was really interesting. And then when you talked about the 4th position, the new franchise brand, which is amazing when you think about all the great entrepreneurs that are out there in the world today that have great businesses locally, somewhere regionally. And at some point, maybe they discover that franchising is an amazing vehicle to scale or grow their idea, their vision. And so that's obviously exciting. And we see a lot of new brands every year that come about. And it's very interesting to see. But one, I was talking to you earlier, and I know one of the big challenges of emerging brands is, how do you get that momentum, right? So tell me a little bit about how you can kind of combine both, it seems like, where you have at the franchise player, you really have an idea of how to recruit, how to focus on, finding players that are in different positions. But a lot of that then could help position 4, right? And
absolutely.
And because that is real hard in those early days. But if you have a unique way to find those candidates, maybe not so. But tell me a little bit about how you accomplish that and might approach that for an emerging brand versus a corporate brand.
Well, I start first by acknowledging and respecting the fact that I don't know everything. And I keep a really strong team of folks around me. So along my career path with all the different brands that I had the pleasure of working with, I met some really great people who work within all different disciplines of franchising. And so I call them, they're friends of mine from all different walks of life. But again, the different disciplines within franchising. So we're talking real estate, construction and design, market planning, marketing, like the list goes on. And so I start really by including them in what I do. And so wherever we have a need, I have really strong relationships with franchise attorneys. So getting a really buttoned up FDD is extremely important. But the consultation piece with the business owner who wants to convert to a franchise, understanding what their goals are and if they're realistic or not. So having those tough conversations, and then if it makes sense, we figure out how we can bring the team together to help them really get off from a position of strength.
Gotcha. And so just back to the how you approach, recruiting from a diversity standpoint with some intent, right? You want to get the word out and education out there. And tell me a little bit about how you're accomplishing that, or at least your vision to do that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So what I do is I think fishing in the big ponds where everyone goes to find candidates is great. I would never say to stop doing that, but we have to think outside the bun. What else is there, right? How do we get into these communities that where some of these aspiring franchisees live. So what I do is I'm looking for all of the opportunities to get out and talk about what I do, what franchising is, what it isn't, and to promote the brands that have partnered with the franchise player. So I go where the African American community lives, works, plays, and worships. And so I'm turning over every rock. I'm going to the sororities and the fraternities. I'm going to the churches and everywhere where I can think that we are. So I get invited to speak at events. I get invited to just attend different events, and nothing's too small for me. I think even if we get one person that's willing to go the length of starting with me and then hopefully signing a franchise agreement or a store development agreement, it's worth it. And so I stay connected to the community. I have my ear to the community. Everyone in my circle or sphere of influence knows what I do and what I love. So they're always sending me information. I'm on webinars. I'm doing everything that I can to get the word out about franchising, the benefits of it, how, I think it's one of America's best kept secrets. And I just think, there's enough to go around for everyone. And not everyone's going to own a McDonald's. Not everyone's going to own a Chick-fil-A, right? Those are the first brands that come out of everyone's mouths. And those are definitely great brands, but there are so many others that could get you on the path to owning one of those brands someday, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you do. And I think, I don't know if it was you or someone else, but there's at least 300, right? Mm-hmm. Industries or more.
Very close to 300.
Yeah. And so it's, there's so many different ways to approach ownership. The idea or the concept that you can build, like you mentioned, generational wealth. It's not a hard concept to share with folks, but they don't, if they've never heard it, then they don't think that way, right? And really, all of these businesses are assets. It doesn't matter if you own a building or in a restaurant or retail operation, or you're building an audience and a list of customers and generating revenue and profit. It's all about building an asset that pays the bills and builds builds that wealth up over a long time. It's better than a 401k.
It is. If you go about it the right ways, it certainly can be. Yeah. And so the way that I also like to work with the brands is, as I'm working with the candidates on this side of the equation, I won't bring anyone to a brand unless I know that they meet the qualifications and they're ready to go. So I've done the vetting. And so what it does is it shortens the life cycle, the sales life cycle, I should say. So once they come to your team, your franchise sales manager pretty much will have everything that they need to hit the ground running with that candidate, versus someone entering as a raw lead, going through that sales funnel. And then you get to a certain point and you realize, oh, wait, they don't have access to capital, or the credit score isn't where we need it to be, or they don't have they don't have an operator. They have the finances, but they don't have, an operator that's going to be there day in and day out. So that's one of the benefits of working with the franchise player for brands, is that, if you become a partner of the franchise player, you're going to have access to candidates that are ready to go.
Yeah.
Versus having to start from ground zero.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you think, just looking at the candidates, and sort of the business owner DNA? I know we talked about the one part was you can introduce a new operator, a new employee, wherever they're starting, but they move up into a manager operational kind of role, and they're learning more. And you can certainly introduce the idea of ownership. So I guess I have twofold question. One is just, how does the franchise player, or do you help companies sort of, first of all, position that differently, right? Where they could start to position this idea of internal recruitment, right? And then, is there something in your experience, because I know you've worked with a lot of candidates, right? Is there something, I know you mentioned operations folks and affinity with the brand, that's obviously helpful, but is there another piece that you see that it's how to identify it as someone this is a mover and shaker. This is someone who will be accountable. This is someone who will get the job done. I mean, again, the rest of the stuff, like getting approved, having the finances, figuring those details out certainly are important, but isn't it really about what I just said? If you put someone in that position, they'll make it happen. And how valuable can they be, right? If they're successful. And so
Absolutely.
it's real important not to overlook that part. Like, you got this diamond in the rough. So, but tell me, how do you navigate that? Like, what are you looking for, I guess, if you're looking for that DNA? What is that one thing you kind of try to spot?
I think, honestly, it's a commitment to success and excellence. And that's something that you can't really teach. Some people either have it or they don't. My dad had this stupid saying, if you can take a seal out of the ocean and teach it to blow a trumpet, you can teach a human being anything you want it to know. And I hated that saying, especially around report card time, but he was right, and I just think we have to get out of our own way sometimes. There are a lot of politics when it comes to who are we going to bring into the brand. What do they look like? What do they talk like? What do they sound like? And it's and I get it. I understand that there's some of those things matter, right? But how do we get to a yes with the folks that are already on the team? Do they have what it takes to operate one of our units or a network of our units, and possibly have one of the most successful networks in the system? How do we get to that, right? And I know most brands don't want to lose their star players. Like, this is my director of operations. He's over the Southern region, and he's the glue that keeps these stores running. But when does he get an opportunity to reap some of the benefits of the hard work and dedication that he's put into the brand? And I think that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. No,
the brands just have to take a look at how do we make that happen. And if that person is as great as they are, more than likely they have someone behind them that could then fill their shoes. And so we just, again, to your point, we just constantly fill the funnel with good talent. And again, getting out of our own way and looking at the bigger goal, right? Growing the brand, having satisfied and successful and profitable franchisees that can serve as great validators for our sales team so they can sell more units. So it's a cycle. And if we can just step aside and let the cycle do what it's supposed to do, I think a lot of brands could see a lot more success.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think of the acres of diamonds. Like I said, these brands have great people making things happen every day. And that's the pull, right? Instead of competing, water pull, right?
That's it.
That's a better pull. So
I have folks who are in operations in my inbox in LinkedIn right now, ready for an opportunity, and they've been passed up. They've just not been seen by their employer, and so in the article I wrote recently, I said, I'm going to paraphrase, but basically find those diamonds in the rough before I help your competition find them. And now you've lost a very valuable player. So I would love to help whatever brands I can to figure out a system that works internally or through the franchise player. But I'm open. In addition to the franchise player, I also own a franchise consulting business that we work with everyone. And that's entitled the Guest First Services. And so we've been around since 2017. And the franchise player is an arm of what we do.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, tell me a little bit about how folks can reach you. I mean, you have potential candidates or folks, like you said, in the community that may want to share some information with their audience or their community, or franchisors, brands. How folks get a hold of you?
So you can visit the website, www.thefranchiseplayer.com. On Instagram, the handle is I am the franchise player. And those are probably the two best ways. If you want to reach me by telephone, you can do that as well. Or email, or telephone number is 678-608-0856. And the email address is info@thefranchiseplayer.com. Excellent.
Well, Tarji, it's been a pleasure to talk about these topics. I hope to have you back again.
Listen, thank you for having me. And if there's anything I can do to help any of your listeners, I'd be honored.
It's great to have you. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.